The bombs slammed into the moving train, right where the arclight of John S. Walmsley Jr.'s B-26 Marauder had pinpointed. For a split second, Walmsley felt a rush of triumph as his aircraft climbed away from the blasts, dodging FLAK and hoping the enemy train was finished. Destroying this train was a massive victory for Operation Strangle, the UN's mission to choke North Korea by denying them their war supplies. But as he glanced down, his heart sank. Somehow, the armored beast kept rolling. Anti-aircraft guns still blazing and the train still crawling forward, determined to reach the North Korean front lines with its thousands of tons of war supplies. Walmsley was out of bombs. With time running out and the flak fire growing more accurate, he called another B-26 for assistance. Taking out that train could mean sparing the lives of countless UN soldiers fighting up ahead. But if they were to finish the job, there was no room for error. The other pilot needed to score a direct hit, and he'd need all the help he could get. With nothing left to drop, Walmsley could only do one thing, even if it likely meant a one-way trip. As he swooped back down towards the train, he flicked on his arclight once more. From Italy to Korea. This wasn't the first time the United States and its allies had tried to choke an army into submission. 7 years earlier, in World War II, American and British-led forces had carried out the original Operation Strangle, a relentless interdiction bombing campaign against German supply lines in Italy. By completely cutting off the enemy's access to vital resources, the plan was to make their positions untenable without engaging their ground forces directly. From March to May 1944, Allied aircraft tirelessly targeted transportation infrastructure across central Italy. Day and night, bombers and fighter bombers struck railways, bridges, and roads, focusing particularly on the critical routes through which German supplies flowed from northern Italy to their frontline positions. However, despite the aircrew's remarkable skill and precision, with some sections of rail lines being struck more than 80 times, German repair workers proved equally adept at implementing temporary fixes, often restoring rail service within hours. The Germans also displayed impressive adaptability, shifting to nocturnal movements, dispersing supply depots, and utilizing alternative routes through the mountains. While Operation Strangle failed to achieve its ambitious goal of forcing a German withdrawal through interdiction alone, it yielded valuable lessons that would shape future air campaigns. It highlighted the importance of coordinating air interdiction with ground operations, as the Germans' static defensive positions required fewer supplies than initially estimated. It also showed that interdiction's effectiveness increased dramatically when the enemy was forced to move, making them more vulnerable to air attack. Additionally, it prompted the Allied nations to lower their expectations about what aerial interdiction could realistically achieve. Not a silver bullet, but a powerful tool for reducing enemy combat effectiveness when properly integrated into a broader military strategy. Applying pressure. Soon enough, they would get to put what they had learned into practice. This time, it would be on the other side of the globe, when an American-led United Nations coalition found itself attempting to repel the invasion of South Korea by Communist North Korea and its Chinese allies. By July 1951, after more than a year of intense fighting that had devastated the peninsula, both sides appeared ready to seek a diplomatic solution. That month, peace negotiations opened at Kaesong, offering hope that the conflict might soon end. The UN forces had successfully prevented the communist conquest of South Korea, while Chinese and North Korean forces had demonstrated they could prevent any UN advance into the north. The military situation seemed ripe for a negotiated settlement. Initially, discussions focused on establishing a demilitarized zone, roughly following the 38th parallel. However, as delegates met at the negotiating table, UN intelligence began detecting a massive buildup of communist forces and supplies. The North Koreans and Chinese were exploiting the relative calm of the negotiations to strengthen their military position. Thousands of trucks moved at night, delivering ammunition, fuel, and other vital supplies to forward positions. New airfields were constructed, roads improved, and supply dumps established, all while peace talks continued. This buildup presented UN commanders with a critical dilemma. The enemy was clearly preparing for either a major offensive or prolonged warfare. Yet a direct ground assault to disrupt these preparations would derail the peace talks and risk massive casualties. The situation demanded a response that could pressure the communist forces without escalating to a full-scale battle. In this context, planners turned to the lessons learned from the World War II Operation Strangle, seeing an opportunity to apply aerial interdiction on an even greater scale. The Korean Peninsula's geography made it particularly suitable for such a campaign. With most major supply routes running north-south through narrow valleys and mountain passes, and the communist forces heavily dependent on railway and road networks, the conditions seemed ideal for a sustained interdiction effort. The stage was set for a new Operation Strangle, one that would build upon its Italian predecessor while adapting to the unique challenges of the Korean conflict. Strangle begins. Operation Strangle launched on August 18, 1951, marking the beginning of one of military history's most intensive air interdiction campaigns. The opening phase focused on a carefully selected 150-mile stretch of North Korean railway lines running from Sinanju to Pyongyang, then east to Wonsan. Within the first 24 hours, B-29 superfortresses and carrier-based Navy aircraft struck simultaneously at 15 key bridges, while fighter bombers systematically attacked rail lines between these crucial choke points. The results were immediately impressive. Taking advantage of clear summer weather, UN air crews destroyed or severely damaged 12 of the targeted bridges in the first week alone. The communist forces, caught off guard by the campaign's intensity and precision, struggled to maintain their supply flow. Though skilled and determined, their repair crews found themselves overwhelmed by the sheer scope of the destruction. Unlike in Italy during World War II, the mountainous Korean terrain offered fewer alternate routes, magnifying the impact of each successful strike. By early September, aerial reconnaissance revealed growing bottlenecks of supplies and equipment north of destroyed bridges and tunnels. Communist supply trains, forced to move at night to avoid attack, found themselves trapped between damaged sections of track, becoming vulnerable targets for night-flying B-26 invaders. Building on the interdiction lessons from the original Operation Strangle, they employed new techniques, such as delayed action bombs to hamper repair efforts, and concentrated attacks on rail bridges at sharp curves where bypass tracks would be difficult to construct. Naval aircraft added another dimension to the campaign, striking coastal supply routes that hadn't existed in the Italian theater. The operation's early success also stemmed from improved coordination between air assets. The Far East Air Forces, or FEAF, worked seamlessly with Navy carrier aircraft. At the same time, B-29s from Strategic Air Command executed precision bombing of the largest bridges. This joint effort achieved round-the-clock pressure that surpassed anything seen in World War II, forcing communist supply officers to abandon any semblance of a regular transportation schedule. The train raid. One of the first pilots to volunteer for Operation Strangle was John S. Walmsley Jr. On the night of September 14, 1951, he and his crew of 3 climbed aboard Skillful 13, an American B-26 bomber, prepared to dive deep into North Korean territory in search of enemy supply convoys. Not all pilots were eager to join Strangle's risky night operations. Flying blind for miles over hostile territory in total darkness, hunting supply trains like ghosts in the night felt dangerously close to a one-way trip. But Walmsley, known among his men as a cheerful, dependable leader, welcomed the new mission's risks. He took off, plunging Skillful 13 into the wild, anti-aircraft-laced valleys of North Korea. And then, near Yeongdeok, 100 miles into enemy territory, there it was, an armed North Korean train. It looked like a cross between a mechanical caterpillar and a porcupine, its dozens of anti-aircraft guns rising skywards menacingly. Destroying it would be a crippling blow to enemy supplies, and a major win for the operation. Walmsley threw his bomber into a sharp dive, charging toward it. As his plane neared the locomotive, he hit the arclight. This searing beam lit up the train below, but gave away Skillful 13's position instantly. He knew what this meant. A few seconds before those gunners could tear him to pieces. The bombs dropped. Direct hit. Fireballs and explosions rocked the train, ripping through its steel. But it kept moving, crawling forward through the damage. With his payload gone, Walmsley couldn't let it slip away. He radioed for another B-26 to assist, and when it arrived, he made a choice. He'd keep that arclight blazing to guide his comrade in, putting his own bomber in the line of fire. 3 passes he made over that train. FLAK tore into Skillful 13, metal shredding under the gunfire. The whole frame shuddered violently, but Walmsley held steady, his arclight guiding the other bomber to its target. On the third pass, fuel began trailing from the wings, steaming behind them in the dark. And then, a spark. The plane lit up like a comet, turning Skillful 13 into a flying inferno. As the other bomber's payload destroyed what remained of the train, Walmsley fought the controls, desperately trying to keep altitude. But the flames were too much. He crashed into a mountainside just 2 miles from the railway. Only gunner George Marauder survived. He was captured and sent to a North Korean POW camp. Walmsley's actions devastated that train and saved the mission. He was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for his sacrifice in the success of Operation Strangle. Yet what happened next would threaten to make Walmsley's sacrifice futile. Total Air War. By early 1952, Operation Strangle had hit a wall. After months of mixed success and mounting frustrations, UN commanders knew they needed a fresh approach. Their answer came in February with Operation Saturate, a supercharged version of their original strategy that zeroed in on critical railway segments with ruthless precision. Dean Rusk, a top U.S. State Department official for East Asian affairs, bluntly admitted the extent of the devastation that followed. Quote, "Everything that moved in North Korea, every brick standing on top of another." The aerial onslaught intensified dramatically. American aircraft didn't just target transportation anymore. They hammered radar installations, anti-aircraft positions, supply depots, mines, power plants, and military schools. The numbers tell a staggering story. Over 635,000 tons of bombs, more than in the entire Pacific theater of World War II, thundered down on the mountainous country. Among these, 32,000 tons of napalm set the night skies ablaze, leaving paths of destruction across North Korea. But the communist forces refused to break. They burrowed deep into the earth, carving out vast networks of tunnels, bunkers, and shelters. Entire communities vanished underground, emerging like shadows when darkness fell. Each night, battalions of North Korean workers swarmed over the destruction, rebuilding what bombs had shattered hours before. By dawn, communication lines hummed again, power plants sparked to life, and trains rolled on repaired tracks. A sobering Air Force analysis in April 1952 laid bare the harsh truth. Despite unleashing an unprecedented storm of destruction, the campaign was falling short, while UN losses mounted in both crews and aircraft. But the most bitter revelation was how the enemy had outsmarted American technological might, countering multi-million-dollar bombing raids with shovels, concrete, and sheer determination. This forced military planners to abandon their dreams of surgical precision, pushing them toward increasingly destructive bombing patterns in a desperate bid to break the stalemate. To strangle an army. Lieutenant Colonel S.B. Folsom summed up the failure of Operation Strangle with a striking metaphor. Strangling an enemy, he said, was like choking a soldier on the battlefield. Quote, "You need to supply constant pressure. In neither case will your efforts be crowned with triumph if the pressure is released at regular intervals, thereby allowing your opponent to breathe." In the end, the lack of continuous pressure proved fatal to the operation's goals. Lieutenant Colonel Folsom explained, quote, "Operation Strangle was more definitely Operation Inconstant." The lessons of Operation Strangle didn't go unheeded, though. 2 decades later, during the Vietnam War, the U.S. faced a similar challenge with the North Vietnamese, who relied on a web of covert routes, tunnels, and night movements along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. American strategists determined not to repeat the errors of the Korean campaign. This time, they committed to 24/7 interdiction, using night sorties and anti-personnel tactics to target not just the routes, but the manpower keeping those routes alive. It took over 20 years, but by Vietnam, the U.S. Air Force had learned the hard lesson of how to truly strangle an enemy army.